Welcome to episode number 11 on the My Story Podcast. The My Story Podcast features interviews with leaders, influencers, and entrepreneurs who tell us their story and the life lessons they've learned along the way. Hi, my name's Conrad Weaver, and I'm your host for the show. I'm a filmmaker, entrepreneur, storyteller, and I'm really looking forward to my summer vacation next month. It's going to be a road trip, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. Hey, if you're a regular listener, you probably noticed I missed a couple of weeks on the podcast. Well, life got busy, which is a good thing. And last week, we celebrated with our son when he graduated from film school with a Bachelor of Science degree in film production from Full Sail University. And we had an exciting time down in Orlando. And I want to say congratulations, Spencer. You're making us proud. So it was really fun to be there and to be a part of that. Today's show is an interview I did several months ago with a friend of mine, Bruce McMahon. Bruce is the president of CMA Purchasing Company. It's a very unique company based in Frederick, Maryland, and he's going to share some of the things that has helped them become a success. I think you'll find our conversation interesting, and if you're like me, you'll learn something from it. But first, a word from our sponsor for today's episode. Furnace Hills Coffee Company roasts amazing coffee. They have a great story too. I'll have to tell you, once you drink a cup of coffee from Furnace Hills, I promise you'll never want coffee from the big name brands again. Why? Their beans are sourced directly from great farmers, and it's roasted fresh. You order it today, and you'll get coffee beans that have been roasted this week, maybe even the same day that it's shipped to your door. The other cool thing about Furnace Hills Coffee Company that I love is their mission is to employ people with developmental disabilities. Their chief roaster is Erin. She has Down syndrome and even has a coffee blend named after her. And just for the My Story Podcast listeners, when you order from furnacehillscoffee.com, use the coupon code MYSTORY, all one word, and get 25% off your order. Check it out. It's special coffee roasted by special people. furnacehillscoffee.com. And now here's my interview with Bruce McMahon. So today I'm in the office with Bruce McMahon. Bruce and I have been friends for I don't know how long. It's been
15 years.
15 years or so, yeah. Bruce, tell me a little bit about what you do. What's your business and who you are and what do you do?
Okay. Well, my business, we're called the FF&E Purchasing Company, and what we do in a nutshell is manage the whole process of designing, laying out, and purchasing all the stuff that goes inside different types of facilities. So we have a government division. That division, we may be installing furniture and carpet and everything that goes into a barracks at a military base in Japan for the U.S. government, or an office facility on a base somewhere else. I manage the commercial division, which we do primarily hotels and resorts. Mm-hmm. So right now, let's say we're getting ready to start a project in Boston. It's a 4-star hotel that when we are done will be a 7-star hotel.
Wow.
Very, very, very high end. All the furniture.
I didn't know they had 7 stars.
I didn't either. That's what they're telling us. The design firms out of London, the company that owns the hotel chain is out of Hong Kong. They only have 3 hotels in the States. Most of them are in Europe and the Far East, but everything is custom. The carpets, the wall coverings aren't, but they're very expensive. All the fabrics are expensive.
And you guys arrange all that or coordinate all that to
Absolutely, yeah. That's why owners hire us. We're almost like the general contractor for the fixtures, furniture, and equipment that goes inside the facilities. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. The company is 31 years old, was started by my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, and myself and my brother-in-law bought them out in 2008. They retired. We had been in the business since the mid-90s, and then we've kind of taken it over and grown it.
So one of your
from
main
doing it.
contracts is government contracts? That's one of your main focuses?
Government contracts, in the beginning, that's all we did. Even really up until maybe 5 years ago, all we did was government. And then I started getting a little restless, seeing how dysfunctional our government was being and had become, and recommended that we start diversifying outside of the government. I mean, I looked at what we did, our core competencies, and you can export that really into any market segment you want. It's just that we had developed a specialty in using government contracts. So we just decided, okay, we're going to start another division, redid all our branding, all our marketing pieces, new website, everything, and just started pounding the pavement, starting off small with small, very unsexy jobs that nobody else wanted. And we did them, and we did them really well. And just over time, we have brought on clients, a lot of word of mouth. And yeah, I mean, so
That's
now
kind of a risk to do that, right? After you guys were kind of comfortable in that government.
It was,
zone.
but it wasn't. I just didn't feel comfortable having all our eggs in the government sector, just because we were seeing more and more funding sources that were via continuing resolution. And when you do that, when they don't have appropriated dollars, people don't spend. They don't really start new projects. They just maintain what they have. And I didn't know where it was going to go, but I mean, it was going on for a number of years in a row, and I was nervous, and I just didn't think it was smart. We had done a really good job of diversifying within the government sector. I mean, at one point, all we did was small military, like officers clubs on military bases. We didn't do any office type work, or we didn't do any lodging or anything like that. So we really diversified within the government sector, which was good. But then we kind of stopped, and the next logical step was to diversify outside of the government market. So it was a risk, but it was one that we really didn't have any choice.
So how was it going from doing these officers clubs or, kind of sexy looking stuff to kind of plain offices or whatever, to start out low on the bottom end?
The government facilities aren't, the sexiest out there, but government contracting is there's just a lot of rules. I mean, you have to operate in that box, and you can't go outside of it.
Or you get dinged, or you get.
I mean,
they find someone else to do the job then.
Well, they have very strict contracting rules and procurement rules, so everything is competitively bid. You can develop relationships, you can know people, but at the end of the day, you have to have the right kind of contract, and you have to be low bid. So you lose a lot of projects to people because they were just lower than your number, and that's not always the best solution for the government. On the commercial side, we do deals all the time where we're not competing against anybody. It's add-on business. We have a ownership group out of Southern California. We did a large hotel for them in Orlando, 400-room hotel 2 years ago. Since then, they've had us do a winery in Texas, a winery in Southern California, and now another hotel in Orlando. So you can develop relationships, you perform well, under-promise and over-deliver, and they continue to use you.
So talk about that, under-promise and over-deliver. I think that's kind of the mantra that I try to do with my business. I come into your company and I help produce a video, but then I want to really just knock it out of the park, and I'll do things that the client didn't expect. So what about that kind of makes you successful?
Well, especially when we're trying to do business with a new client for the first time, you have the stereotypical salesman that just says yes, right? And it doesn't matter what the question is or what the requirement is, what the demand is, yes. And we just don't do that. If let's say they have a budget that is just not going to work for what they want to accomplish, we just tell them up front.
Do you lose business that way, or potential business?
We haven't. No, we haven't. I think people appreciate the honesty. If their schedule's very tight, we can say, this is a really tight schedule. We may be able to do it, but we may not. We're not just going to go in there and say, yeah, we're going to do it. I would rather be honest up front and really lose a job than say yes and make them miss their opening day.
Screw it up for them.
Yeah, and not only will they not use you again, they will tell other people in their network not to use you.
Right.
So I'd rather just not get the business to begin with.
Run.
Oh, absolutely. It's a relatively small industry that we're in with hotel owners, and people talk. So we would rather go in, just be completely honest up front. I mean, we'll be aggressive. We'll be aggressive with budgets. We'll be aggressive with schedule, but we're not going to promise something that we deep down inside know is not
What's an
doable.
example of a client or a deal you guys did where you under promised, but then you just knocked it out?
Well, I'll use this 400 room property down in Orlando. They had an incredibly aggressive schedule. And when they brought us on, they had already worked with another procurement company and fired them. So they were behind the 8 ball from a time frame standpoint. We went down and met with them. The next day was our beach week, and the first week in August. So I worked literally the entire week. I was sitting in the sand underneath an umbrella with my laptop, doing stuff, emailing everything. We put the whole thing together, and we knocked it out of the ball. I mean, we used our resources and our contacts to provide what they wanted, really actually a little under their budget, and we got it to site before we had promised we would. Now it ends up that their construction ended up really falling behind, and so we got it there. They weren't ready they couldn't install it.
Okay.
But thankfully we worked with them the whole time. They had ballrooms where they could store everything. And the property we just went to the grand opening in November of last year. And so this was, when I did this, August 2 years ago.
Wow.
So I think that's an example of, where we did under promise and over.
Do you think in business generally that's not the rule? That's not the standard?
Should be. It should be, but no, I don't think it is.
Why is that?
I think people, especially if you're a new business or if you're trying to break into a new industry, you just need that opportunity, and you just need that first door open. And I think a lot of people will say anything, do anything to get that. And that's just not the approach we've taken over the years, just because it can end up doing more harm than good. And for me, I'm not willing to roll the dice to do the opposite, overpromise and underdeliver.
Right.
So,
and it sounds like you've made, been a success at delivering those kind of deals and doing that.
Yeah, we've thankfully, since the company's been in business so long, we have very, very strong relationships with suppliers. And so it was relatively easy to leverage those relationships from one market segment to another. And really, in our business, to a certain extent, you're only as good as your suppliers. We're not manufacturing anything. We're not importing anything. We're managing. We do design work, but for the most part, we're managing. And if your supplier doesn't deliver, then you fail.
So that way you have to have good relationships with suppliers you can trust.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's suppliers out there that'll tell you anything. And so sometimes you learn the hard way. And the other thing is treating them right, treating suppliers right, paying them on time. sometimes it's a fine line between what your client wants and what's actually fair. And sometimes we didn't feel what the client want was fair, and so we just paid, say, to have some stuff replaced. The example was they claimed that it came in damaged. Well, it had been there for 6 months. Nobody ever said anything about it. And we didn't feel right about going back to the manufacturer 6 months later and say, hey, this came in damaged. Nobody mentioned anything.
It was sitting there for 6 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we wanted to please the customer, the client, and it was a good client. So we just ordered more replacements and paid for them out of our pocket.
Wow.
I mean, you do that kind of thing for good clients.
And you kept a good relationship with a good client.
Yeah. And we told the manufacturer what was going on. They even sold it to us at 25% of what the original cost was, because we were willing to. So it's a win-win. It's a win for everybody. It's not that much money out of our pocket. We didn't ask the manufacturer to do something for free. The client got stuff replaced that really probably they damaged. Everybody wins there.
Yeah.
So
wow. So you didn't grow up in this business.
No.
So tell me about your young. I mean, where you grew up, because you have an interesting story, just from your growing up years and what your parents were involved in, and so talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was born in Texas and to a family of oil men. When I was in first grade, we moved to London. My dad was transferred. We lived in London for 3 years. And my dad was the manager for kind of the North Sea. He would go out on oil drilling platforms and oil rigs in the North Sea, and his company made a lot of the equipment that these things would use. Then he started making trips to the Middle East, and he would be gone sometime for a month or 6 weeks at a time. And it was really a struggle for my mom to, I was in first grade, second grade. My brother's 2 years younger than me, and she's there in London by herself. So they ended up moving us over to Dubai, and we were there for a couple of years.
And it was pretty much at that time just a big sand lot.
There
right?
was nothing there. There was nothing there. There's a very small, tight-knit American community around a school, and everybody kind of lived in that general area. But other than that, there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and that was it.
KFC everywhere.
Now it's just, look at it.
Have you been there recently?
Crazy. I flew through there 3 years ago on the way to Israel. But we just stayed in the airport. But it was really interesting seeing what it's become from the air, especially. And we lived right on the beach in the area.
Some of the tallest buildings in the world are there.
Yeah.
Right?
On Jumeirah Beach, that's all where all these buildings are. That's where we lived, and our house was long gone. But yeah, and then we moved back to the States. So I had done a lot of traveling and everything. And
what was that like moving from first from Texas to London? I mean, do you remember that? Do you remember those days in London?
Yeah, you learn to adapt. I learned to adapt at an early age, to make friends. And then there's funny things like we lived close to a park, Regent's Park in London, and I was in the playground playing with some other young kids, English kids, and they started asking me where I was from, and I said America. One of them said, "Oh, how do you say hello in American?" And so I went, "Oh," they're like, "Oh, wow," But yeah, you learn to adapt, you learn to make friends, you learn to assimilate to other cultures and other environments, and I think that served me well in later years, and as I was going through my career and moving, doing different jobs at different companies and whatnot.
Now you went back to Texas then. How old were you then?
I started sixth grade in Houston, and went. Grew up, went to college there, and then moved to D.C. in '87.
What brought you to D.C.?
And I had a degree in architecture, and at that time in Texas, we were kind of in the middle of a banking crisis, and there was just no building of new buildings or design of new buildings going on, and the real estate market, commercial real estate market in D.C. was still strong. And so I got a job with what was then one of the largest architecture firms in the country in the DC office, and knew that I wanted to do something a little different. I always liked development, real estate development. And so after I worked there, I went to work for one of the largest general contractors in the country now, and building office buildings in downtown DC and the immediate area. Then went back to business school for my MBA, which I would highly recommend to anybody with a technical undergraduate degree, because you just don't get basic business skills and knowledge and learning. You're so focused on the technical side of it. And so having kind of those two, architecture and MBA, really helped me. After that, I worked for a couple of companies as doing mostly commercial real estate consulting. And that's what I was doing when I moved to CMA and kind of helped take over the family business and grow it. So,
wow, so it's a very kind of a varied path you've been on.
Yeah.
And how has that really shaped who you are today?
Well, I think specific to business, and we have this on our website on my bio, so I can say, hey, I've been the architect and I understand the design process. I've been the contractor. I understand the renovation construction process. I spent a couple of years at MCI Telecommunications doing corporate type real estate work. And then I worked for Roger Staubach's former company doing the same thing, but as a consultant. So I understand the real estate portion of it as well. And really all those things are involved in what we do here at CMA. And so I can kind of put on the different hats depending on the circumstances of the project or in the meeting. And I think that adds a lot of value to the project team as a whole.
So what are some of the biggest challenges you guys face as a company, as a business, in the business world? What are some of those challenges and how do you approach that?
Well, the biggest challenge recently was when we decided to diversify and branch out, just getting that first project.
And so how did you do that?
We did some trade shows. We got really lucky with a national brand and who was not really working with anybody in our industry. And that's where we got our first break. And we just covered them up with service. I mean, we just went so above and beyond that they couldn't not like us, you know. They couldn't not be pleased.
They were going to work with you one way or the other, right?
and you know, they were small little mom and pop places that had super tight budgets. It could, 20 rooms or less. Sometimes it's stuff that the other people, didn't want. Mm-hmm. But we just did it. And we made the best of it, and it just kind of grew from there. And one thing I'll say is never underestimate the power of luck, because I have been so lucky really in my life. As a Christian, I view it as being blessed, but never underestimate the power of that. It's just amazing how many times I've just walked into something, had no idea it was there, and all of a sudden there's an opportunity and you pursue it and it turns out to be something. The challenge is to realize when it's luck and not talent, right. And so, because your head gets big.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you think, I can't do anything wrong. Mm. I mean, every
Have you had those moments where it just you just sucked? And the job went down the toilet.
I mean, there's always those projects that just nothing goes right. And it doesn't really matter what you do. And it's not necessarily anybody's fault. It just doesn't go right. And then you go through seasons of you just can't win a project. You're coming in second every time. So what are we doing wrong?
Depressing.
It does. It gets, you start second guessing yourself, or then you start cutting your fee.
Is that a smart move?
I think it depends on the circumstances, and it depends how much you cut. I know when we were transitioning from doing the, say, 2-star type properties to try to go to the 3.5, 4-star properties, the very first couple of projects that we submitted proposals on, we went in with a very, very aggressive fee. And in one instance, we were asked point blank if we had enough money in it to do the project if we were awarded, because you're way lower than everybody else. Wow. And we told them we did, and we had told them in our proposal that, you know, we're trying to establish a relationship with you, and we're being very aggressive on this. And we didn't get the job. Wow. Despite that. And
did they tell you why?
They said that on that one, that it was a very, very tight schedule. The company that hiring the purchasing company, it was actually their first project with that owner. So it was a new owner to them, and they just didn't want to have then a new FF&E company at the same time with a tight schedule. Personally, we didn't think the schedule was that tight. You know, we put a schedule together that fit into their schedule that was very doable. But, you know, I can understand that. We get manufacturers coming to us all the time. It's the same kind of situation. You know, they're just looking for that one open door, that one break. And in fact, we had to tell a couple of people who've been calling on us for a while last week that we weren't using them on a project for that very same reason, that we didn't want, it was our first project with an owner. It was a tight schedule, and we wanted to use somebody we knew that was going to perform for us because we'd worked with them. The relationships were there and everything. Right. So I get it. It goes on both sides of the story. So you just can't get down, even though you hit a dry spell.
It does kind of affect you in a way, because I've had a couple of bids here recently that didn't pan out, and it's like, okay, what am I missing here?
Right.
You know, am I too high? Am I too low? Am I, what's the problem? And actually, the one client that I was pretty sure I was going to get the job, because I was been back and forth with them several times, and they really felt that it was moving in the right direction. And at the end, it was a no. So I ended up sending them a thank you gift.
Oh, wow.
I said, hey, thanks for letting me bid on your project. Right. I didn't know anything would come for that. Maybe I thought, well, kind of behind the scenes, my thinking was, if they see that, they're going to say, well, who'd that come from?
Right.
Oh, that guy that, we turned down.
Yeah.
Well, we should use him next time,
Right.
That was kind of my thinking. But
I like that. I'll have to keep that one in the back of my mind.
He didn't win it, but I sent him a gift anyway. So
yeah.
But who knows? So thinking about business and life, what is success?
Yeah, there's
deep here.
There's a couple of ways to approach that. I mean, our society views success primarily as money and things. I think I view success as being able to do the right thing. As a business owner, providing a good work environment for your employees, taking care of your employees, having employees that are very loyal. We have several people here that have been with us over 15 years. And I think and they're younger. They're not older.
What's the secret to your success there of having good employees that stay?
I think because we're small, there's really no office politics. There's no riding people's coattails. We all are here to get the job done, and everybody helps everybody. And we've had more employees, we've had less employees over time. We've had times when the mix of staff was not that good in terms of personalities. And,
I remember
there was conflict.
I was first starting into business. I was thinking about going into business. I took you out to lunch one day. I was just wanted to pick your brain about business.
Okay.
And you walked in the restaurant and you looked at me and you pointed to me and said, "Don't ever hire anyone."
I went through a period where we had 25 people or so. So it's not even really that big. But the people part of it was definitely the worst part for me. I'm not.
Why is that? Is this
Well, because every week somebody was coming in my office and it would be, well, so-and-so didn't say hi to me this morning on the way in. It's like, really? And so I'm more of a analytical person, more of a strategy person, and more of a managing processes, not people. That's not my strength.
And you have people here that do that are the kind of the people.
Yeah, I mean, that was one reason I realized at that point that I needed to hire an operations manager to help manage, the different groups, the different departments and everything that we had. And I've learned. I went to classes. I hired a consultant to help me develop those skills, and it does get easier. But what had happened is we grew so fast. We had a period where we grew so fast that it was all I could do to keep my head above water, and we were hiring quickly, and we just didn't put the policies and procedures in place to help manage the human resources.
Do you think hiring right is more, hiring the right people is more important than hiring the best people?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can get somebody with great skill, great knowledge and everything, but if their personality type creates a caustic environment, it's not good. And we did have that happen. Very talented, very experienced person, but we've had it happen a couple of times. And for future business owners out there, this is going to sound a little harsh, but get rid of them as soon as you realize it's a problem. Do not wait. Do not put it off. Do not think that they'll change, even if you have a couple of conversations with them. And
because it'll cost you in the long run.
It will. And it'll cost you good people if it gets bad enough. And I learned from that because nobody likes firing people.
Sure.
Especially people that are good at what they do, just not good from a relationship standpoint, right. Within the company. And I learned my lesson the hard way. And so when it happened again, I acted quicker and took care of it. But it's at the end of the day, still, it's not fun. It's not, even to fire somebody for cause, it's just not fun.
Right. Right.
It's
something
hard.
my wife Jody's having to learn because she's an assistant principal now, and she has to do the hiring and firing, and she had to let someone go here a while back, and she said, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was someone she liked.
Yeah. Or even when it's somebody you don't like, it's still hard, because it's going to affect their family, but yeah, you really kind of have to focus on what's best for the organization as a whole, and
so going back to kind of talking about success, what are some things that young entrepreneurs, leaders, influencers should do to set themselves up for success?
I would say put in your dues. Don't, especially starting out, do anything you can and everything you can. If you're in a larger company, move around, work in different departments, really understand how the business works, how the industry works. Never think that something is beneath you. Oh, yeah, no, hold it. I have a degree and blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't be doing that. That's beneath me. I'm beyond that.
Boy, that is so important.
The more that you learn about how a business operates, how an industry operates, you're setting the groundwork for being successful in the business world that way, because you understand it. You can view things from different perspectives, from a marketing perspective, an accounting perspective, a sales perspective, an operations perspective. If you can get just a well-rounded background, it'll really help you when you're the leader. You'll understand, and you'll know when you're in above your head. I mean, when I hired the operations manager, it's like, why didn't I realize this sooner? And bringing that person in, and it was the right person, changed everything.
Wow.
Changed it for the better. And even the people that she was managing were happier because she could provide them something that I couldn't. I would say that's another thing. Realize when you don't have the skill set or the talent to do something, don't think you have to do or can do it all, because you can't.
Right.
Very, very, very few people can do that.
Right.
And when you find yourself in a situation where you need somebody else, find the right person and do it. You will never regret it if you get the right person.
I know in making, I make movies, and the one thing that I just really am bad at is editing audio and post-production. And so now I'm making a podcast.
Right.
Where I'm editing audio.
Yeah.
But I realize on the movie side, I'm just not good at it. And I do it, when I don't have the budget to hire, a guy that costs $200 an hour to do the editing, I do it myself. But I realize that this is something I really need help with.
Yep. And the experience, you'll get better at it the more you do it.
So maybe my podcast editing will help me get better at
right,
editing the movie audio. But I know, eventually I just want to outsource that and get someone else that's better at me than doing it. And even like doing stuff with graphics and animation and stuff, these young guys, they grew up with After Effects and they know all this stuff, and I don't even want to learn that.
Right.
Because I'll hand it off to them and they'll just whip it out in a couple hours.
Right.
And,
hire a specialist.
Yeah. So what should a young person not do?
It's been a long time since I've been a young person. So, I would say don't just chase the almighty dollar.
So live your life with purpose.
Yeah, and especially, just starting out, I think people can be tempted by money versus the actual job description and the work they'll be doing. So I mean, that's hard, especially working out. You come out of school or whatever, you've got some debt and everything, you want to be making a good living, but the money will come if you do the right things in the beginning and lay the groundwork for being successful later on. So I didn't have that. Wasn't an issue for me because I got out of school with a degree in architecture and went to work in 1987 making $17,500 a year working in downtown DC as a staff right out of school architect. That's all you could get. I mean, maybe you could get 19, but there was. But now with computer science degrees and engineering degrees, I mean, I hear a kid starting at $70,000 to $90,000 right out of school, which just blows me away.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It blows me away.
Wow.
So,
but that's not the norm. That's not everybody. I mean,
I don't think so. I mean, I've prepared my son who's graduating in May not to be making that kind of money right out of school. What's his degree in? He has a degree in environmental studies, and double major, and political science with a minor in economics. Okay. So he wants to go into environmental policy, maybe go to law school.
So that's why he's moving to Denver. There's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yeah, and he's a mountain guy. He loves Denver. He was skiing out there during Christmas break. He's done some hiking out there and past summers, loves it. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of places, worse places than Denver you can move. You can guarantee Mom and I will be visiting you whenever we're invited if you move out there. Yeah. So I'm really excited to see what happens with it.
So just a couple more questions. We'll wrap it up. What are some of the life lessons that you've learned over the years that have really guided you along the way?
One thing, especially when you're the leader of an organization, is that your words matter, and what you say to people and how you say it matters. I always underestimated that portion of it just because the way I'm wired, that I could say something to somebody in a tone or manner that to me was just kind of matter of fact, but to everybody else was, because of where I was in the company, was perceived as negative. And it took me a while to learn that really, what you say and how you say it matters, and it affects people's lives for the positive and negative. And then just letting people know that they matter, that what they do here at the office and even outside the office matters, and that, you know, we wouldn't be the company we are without all the people that are out there, and they're different personality types, they're different experiences, they're different expertise and talents, and I don't think I tell them enough, and I've been focusing on that, of letting them know, you know, you really knocked it out of the park on, you know, with the so-and-so last week, or, you know, Chris, what you do here matters. It really, we couldn't do what we do without your input.
I mean, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't want to hear that.
There isn't. The thing is that for my personality type, I don't need that, and I don't get it. I mean, the only
boss and you're the
yeah. So I mean, you know, and the employees walked in here, you know, every other week and said, Bruce, you're doing a great, you know, I was like, oh, you brown nose, or what do you want to raise or something, you know?
Right.
So that it just doesn't happen. The only place I get it is at the gym. My trainer, man, great workout today, Bruce. Yeah, you did, man, you killed it. And he could be making it up, but it feels good.
Sure.
And I'm not knocking, you know, any, but, you know, my kids are gone. So
Right.
They don't, when we talk, I said, Dad, I love you. I really appreciate it. But, you know, that's, so it's kind of like when you don't get it and you don't need it, it's not a natural thing to give it. But you really need to, if you're wired that way, you really need to be aware of it, and you need something you need to focus on and become better at.
That's good.
And I'm trying to do that. Yeah, I kind of went to, well, it was the summit that Willow Creek does.
Yeah, Leadership Summit.
And that was, the Leadership Summit. That was one of the presentations in the summit in August, and it really spoke to me. I was like, yeah, that's me, and I really need to focus on that over the next year. So,
very cool. So what's the next big thing for you?
Next big thing for me, well, we're moving, we're downsizing. You know, we've entered a different part of our life. Our youngest is graduating college, and so we're selling our house. We're moving into a townhouse, and both of our children our daughter lives in Texas. You know, Nick will go to Denver, hopefully.
Where in Texas is she?
She lives in Tyler, which is a couple hours east of Dallas.
Okay.
So yeah, my daughter works at a kind of a boutique-y Italian restaurant, and has just decided that she wants to go to culinary school.
Okay, cool.
She's going to start that. I don't know if it's in the summer or in the fall. And the owner of the restaurant's really.
So you like being empty nesters?
Love it. Love our kids and everything, but we love being empty nesters. Where, you know, we've been in this house for 21 years. You know, raised the kids there and all that, and it's just time to downsize to something that's smaller, that has less maintenance. And we want to be able to get on the boat and go when we can, you know, I mean, for a month or however long.
Sure.
The boat is the type that, I mean, we could go to the Bahamas in it.
Okay.
It's you know, that type of boat. You can live on it. It's like an RV on the water, basically.
Sure.
And so we want to be able to do that and not have to worry about, you know, mowing the yard and our house is 95 years old. So something always needs to be fixed, always need to be
Can imagine something that old,
yeah. Yeah.
And even a house of mine, my house is 15 years old, and there's always something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to being in something brand new, and, you know, with neighbors right around us, so we can go. We don't have to worry about anything really. So yeah, that's what's next. It's going to be a big lifestyle change, and just making the decision to move from a house you've lived in that long is a very emotional thing. And so once we made the decision, our townhouse they haven't even broken ground on it yet. So we're going to have to live in an apartment, then move over there. But once we made that decision, it's like, okay, let's just do it. Let's sell the house and we'll live in an apartment or whatever. But
you guys going to retire here or this area?
I don't know. I don't.
Or will you retire?
I don't want to. I mean, I'm 55, so I've got a ways to go. I really like what I do, and with my role, I can really doesn't really matter. I don't have to be sitting here in the office to do it, especially with technology and with the way we have the office set up. I'm really not important to the day-to-day operation of the business. So I can kind of, be wherever. And so
you can be on the boat and
could be on the boat. And we've done it. I mean, we spent 3 weeks last year, and I've got a Wi-Fi booster on the boat, and usually we can be an anchor somewhere, on the Choptank or Chester River or wherever, and tap into somebody's Wi-Fi that's not, password protected, and do email so. Yeah, it's kind of nice, but I love what I do. I don't want to. I'm nowhere near retirement, and we're in the middle of a really good economic environment, and it looks like it's going to slow down a little later in the year, maybe into 2020, and then. But I think we're in a good position now to weather anything that would happen short of another Great Depression.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's where we're heading.
Well, Bruce, I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today. I think it's been interesting to hear a different type of industry that I'm not real familiar with, and so it's been fascinating.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Conrad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce, for spending time with me on today's program. I really enjoyed our conversation and looking forward to connecting with you again soon. So be sure to tune in next time for an interview with an amazing human being. Judy Robinette is a connector. She's an expert on connecting startup businesses to investors. In fact, she's written a couple of books about it. Her most recent book is called Crack the Funding Code: How Investors Think and What They Need to Hear to Fund Your Startup. And her previous book was called How to Be a Power Connector, the 550 and 150 Rule. I had the privilege of recording an interview with her recently, and our conversation was amazing. So be sure to tune in next week for this inspirational and informative interview. The My Story podcast is produced by Conjo Studios, an award-winning video production company whose focus is helping you tell your story. Visit conjostudios.com, click on the blue Get a Quote button, and let them know what you need. Then watch your stress melt away as their team does the magic of producing your next video or film project. That's conjostudios.com, telling stories that matter. If you like the music from today's show, it's from my friend Drew Davidson. Go to drewdavidson.com or search for him on iTunes or Spotify, and you can get all his music. Last, if you have an idea for an interview you'd like to hear, send me a message, and I'll see what I can do. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you again next week on the My Story podcast.